Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. My name is Macy, and I am so excited to have you joining me this morning. So it's been a busy, crazy week for me. I guess the last week and a half, I held my 5th women's coaching retreat. This one just so happened to be associated with the hybrid experience round 4. And if you haven't listened to episodes in a while, then you may not know that this was the last hybrid experience round for quite some time. I am working on some new projects and some new advanced coaching spaces. And so this was kind of like the wrap-up experience of the hybrid experience. It was round 4. We did our retreat in Colorado. And I will tell you that it was one of the most deeply led, in general, just such a deep retreat with lots of emotions, lots of big work, lots of things to navigate. And I have come back from that, and I have been doing a lot of reflecting and also a lot of sleeping, as have many of the other ladies as well. It's just been a lot to process all around. But they're always so wonderful. Like, they are great growth opportunities. If you've never put yourself in a position to go to a retreat, it's always very deep, and there are a lot of emotions and triggers and things that come up. But if you can lean into those experiences, it is life-changing. I mean, my retreats, and you all know this from being long-time podcast listeners if you've been here a while, my retreats that I went to as a client back in, I guess it would have been 2016 and 2017, or maybe 2017 and 2018. I can't remember, but I've gone to many. But the ones that stick out in my mind were the ones that called me into very uncomfortable positions. And my gosh, did I want to run away from those moments. But being someone that just leaned in and decided to stick to it transformed my whole entire life. So if you ever have an opportunity to get into those kind of advanced spaces or those advanced rooms, know you're signing up for some really, really hard things, but really great things will come out of it if you allow it. Something that we're going to be talking about today is the topic of learned helplessness. And I'll just tell you that this came about because I was scrolling on social media, and I happened to see a short clip of a psychology professor teaching. She actually wasn't teaching. She was teaching, obviously. She's a professor, but she was doing a classroom activity. And the setup was that one half of the room got more of an easy part of the activity, and the other half of the room received a harder part of the activity, actually an impossible task that no matter how hard they would have tried, they wouldn't have been able to successfully complete it. And what she did was, but the students didn't know that. So what she did was say, complete the activity 1, and when you're done, raise your hand. And because the right side of the room could easily complete it, they kept raising their hand, but the left side of the room had the impossible task, so they couldn't complete it. So then she did the same with activity number 2, and she said, as soon as you're done, raise your hand. So everybody on the right side was able to raise their hand, and everybody on the left side had the impossible task, and they couldn't. And then she asked them to do the third, and the third was the same activity for everybody. So most everybody was able to raise their hand. And what she was teaching them was this concept of learned helplessness. And she asked the students who were not able to raise their hand, because at the time they didn't know they got an impossible task, she asked them how it felt to see the hands raise of the whole right side and what they started to internalize within themselves because they weren't able to do it like everybody else. And they started saying, like, my confidence was shot. I was very frustrated. I felt defeated. I felt angry. I felt confused. And what she shared with them is what I did in that experiment was create learned helplessness in the left side of the room. And I was able to do it in as little as 5 minutes. And this really inspired me, and it made me want to talk about learned helplessness because obviously, like, whenever I get clients, right, whenever I'm working with clients, this is something that can so easily remove someone from their potential and really drown out possibility that is available to them. And that's a huge piece of what I do in coaching, is help restore a lot of that possibility and help them get out of their own way. But if they have had this learned helplessness for a while, it's a very hard thing to break out of, no matter how much pouring into I may do. So I really wanted to talk about this, and hopefully it helps you see where maybe you are getting stuck, maybe where you've experienced learned helplessness, or you are experiencing some learned helplessness. And that way, you know, you get to decide how powerfully you move through it. So something that comes up a lot if we're in learned helplessness is the question that we pose to ourselves of, you know, why should I even bother? Why should I even try? It never works out anyways. If you have ever felt this way or have used these statements, it often can be a sign that you're in learned helplessness. It's essentially when your brain gets conditioned to believe that your efforts, no matter what those efforts are for, don't matter, and therefore you stop putting the efforts in. So the easiest way to kind of dumb this down is you try something, you fail at it, or you don't get the result that you want from it, and then you quit because that failure is so incredibly painful for your system that you then start telling yourself, well, it doesn't matter. Why would I try again? And so something that I want to talk about is a little bit of the psychology behind this, because it does have a neurological impact on us. It changes how we process possibility. And if you know anything about my work and what I work so hard to do with my clients is to create more possibility, to take the limitations that exist in our brain and all of those beliefs where we think the world is out to get us, or people are out to get us, or, you know, that life is happening to us rather than for us. It's to take all of those stories and turn them into, instead, tools and lessons and things that we can use to create our best life. So the neurological impact of, you know, this learned helplessness is that our brain literally will filter out options that are available to us, so possibilities that are available to us, because it assumes that we are powerless, all because we maybe had 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, however many experiences where something did not feel good to our system. And again, this is where emotional intelligence matters, right? Because with emotional intelligence, you're learning how to manage your emotional experiences. You're learning emotional maturity skills. If someone lacks emotional intelligence skills, they're going to have higher emotional reactions to hard things, and therefore the learned helplessness pattern is going to be stronger. Whereas if you really feel like you can bounce back from emotions that feel very painful, difficult, hard, you are going to set yourself up on the trajectory to be able to try things again without removing yourself from the growth itself. But another thing psychologically where this learned helplessness kind of comes into play is that it's deeply connected to depression and anxiety, because chronic helplessness often fuels low motivation and hopelessness, and then a cycle of inaction. So if you're the type of person also that's like, I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it, and then you get depressed or you get anxious or you start beating yourself up, and then before you know it, you've got 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of having wanted things to change, but things never did change, then you have to ask yourself, why is that? And a lot of times it's because now that chronic helplessness, has created this pattern of, nothing is ever going to change. So now I'm stuck here. It's a very vicious cycle to be in. So what I wanted to do also is give you some examples of how this can show up in everyday life, because learned helplessness, doesn't just span across one situation. It can span across multiple situations. And this list is not all inclusive by any means, but I'm just going to cover some of the categories that I cover with my clients, because as an emotional intelligence coach, I am able to take any kind of concept and cover it across multiple areas, because you're learning EQ skills for money, relationships, career, entrepreneurship, your mental health, your emotional health, your own self-growth, parenting. And so these skills relate no matter how you're going to apply them and what category you're going to apply them. But I want to show how learned helplessness shows up in some various categories, just to help you in case you need kind of an indicator of, am I doing this in this particular area? Yes or no. Again, this is not an all-inclusive list. So one way is work. Okay, so think of work and career. If you do not speak up for promotions, or you do not put yourself out there for new roles because your thought process is, they won't pick me anyways, that is a learned helplessness. It basically means that you have probably had a previous experience where you put yourself out there, or you did something really brave that scared you to death. You didn't get the result that you wanted, and that stung. It hit your ego a certain type of way, right? Whenever you didn't get what you wanted. And so now you have this attitude of, I'm not going to try that again because it wasn't successful last time. I don't have the emotional capacity or the emotional intelligence to push myself out there again. I haven't built that skill. And so it's easier to believe they wouldn't pick me for it anyways. So any kind of flavor of that in your work environment where you could put yourself in a position of growth, but you do not, because you have a past history of it not working out. And now you're applying that past history to every possibility. Here's that word again, possibility. You won't even put yourself out there. The next one is relationships. So in relationships, learned helplessness may show up as not asking for what you need because he or she never listens, or because you believe this is as good as it's going to get. You have some unfulfilling dynamics. Again, this is a big one for relationships. And I think it's really this one comes up a lot for clients. It's even come up for me, and probably even, my husband in relation to me, where you bring things up and someone doesn't see your perspective, and then you feel shut down, and it feels so painful that they don't see your perspective. And so then you never want to really share your perspective again, because you feel like the reaction that you get is not worth it. So then you just kind of push every hard conversation under the rug, or every situation that you think is going to rock the boat under the rug. That is a level of learned helplessness. And so I'm even glad for myself that this was a video I stumbled upon in my morning scroll, because it's oh yeah, it's a reminder that we can do this in so many areas. And here's the thing, if we come from a line of different traumas or really hard upbringing, the learned helplessness is going to be more hardwired for people like that than it is for the people who had more encouragement growing up to try and fail. which I'm going to get off on a little tangent really quick, but I think it's so helpful. I don't know if any of you all that listen follow Sarah Blakely. She was the creator, inventor, and then CEO, I'm assuming, of Spanx. So like the tight stocking hose. She's amazing. I love her attitude and mentality. It's so glass half full all the time, or the glass is full. She has such an incredible spirit. If you don't follow her on Instagram or other social medias, or you haven't gotten familiar with her story, I think she is someone so worth following. But I was watching interviews of her years ago, and something that I found to be so incredibly inspiring in how she was raised, and something I want to keep in mind for my own children when that day comes, is that her dad would always ask her and her brother when they got home from school what they failed at. And, they didn't know it at the time, but what he was doing was training their brain that failure was not a bad thing, and that failure should be talked about, and that you should actually encourage failing. So when they get home from school, he'd say, "What did you fail at today?" in a very positive manner. And because of that, their brain started associating great conversations around failure and trying. And it was never something where they were shunned, or disciplined for having failures. In fact, it was celebrated. And so if they came home and they hadn't failed at something, he was more disappointed, because he wanted them to put themselves out there and fail and fail and fail and fail and fail over and over. And because of that, it strengthened both of their muscles, and especially her. She's a billionaire now, where failure is not a bad thing. She'd just try. And if she failed, she didn't have the same emotional response. It was like, oh, this is a good thing. I love failing. And I remember, even in saying that, years ago, I was at a coaching conference for my coach. I was working it, and you get to watch all of the coaches cross stage to their, once they've made $200,000 in their business or more, which is so incredibly inspiring. And so people are crossing stage that are just at 200,000, or that are at, 600,000 or 900,000. And they get to share for about a minute, something that they find very inspirational, like a sentence that they're going to share with the audience. And one of the coach's sentences was, "I love to fail, and I love figuring out new ways to fail." And it just really stuck with me that this whole idea around failing doesn't have to feel so scary, and messing up doesn't have to feel so scary if we can just change our attitude around it. And that's really the counteraction. I don't know that that's necessarily the word, but that's really what we want to be looking for if we've gotten into any kind of learned helplessness, but we have to be very aware of it. Okay, so back to my list of examples. As far as health or wellness, if you give up on habits because you say to yourself, well, I always quit eventually, or that's the history of what you've done, you're experiencing learned helplessness. You're now associating all the times you failed at losing weight, or getting in better shape, or doing better with your eating. You've now associated it with something that never works out, or that you always quit. And so now your brain has learned, why even try? Why keep trying? It's too painful to try and then fail. With money, believing that you'll never get ahead with money, or, that making money is hard, or keeping money is hard, or all of the negative money beliefs that we can have. When you have that mentality, your brain is not even going to try to budget, or to invest, or to make some scary moves, or to negotiate. You shut down your brain's ability to do what it is able to do best, and that's to problem solve and figure it out. But problem solving is even an emotional intelligence skill. So again, when we are not equipped with emotional intelligence skills, it doesn't matter the category, it's very easy to get into this habit of learned helplessness. With parenting, assuming that in any of your parenting efforts, your child will not change, or their behaviors will not change. So then you stop giving them consistency. You stop telling them. It's I've told them to clean their room a million times. They never do it. It creates an argument or a fight. It creates more chaos. So I don't feel the need to continue. That is even a learned helplessness in how you are, rearing your children, right? Or how you are showing up for your children. So when you give up on consistency because you're not getting the result that you're wanting, you are now in a learned helplessness of assuming it's never going to change just because you've collected evidence that so far it hasn't. And therefore your brain doesn't come up with creative solutions of like, how can we make it motivating to clean their room? How can we change this behavior? How can I teach them a different lesson? Like when you give up, then you essentially create in them more evidence of their own learned helplessness, even if they apply that learned helplessness in their own life in their own way. Okay, and then in terms of like self-growth things, if you use the sentence, this is just who I am, or that's just who I am, or this is just my personality, instead of testing new behaviors or ways that you can grow and change, like you are in learned helplessness. Years ago, it was Dr. Joe Dispenza. I absolutely love his work, but I remember him saying like, people who use the sentence like, this is just my personality, this is just my personality, are people who have repeated certain sentences to themselves so many times that they now believe that this is their personality, and therefore it is now their personal reality. And I remember that just like shaking me to my core, because I had heard so many people, try to tell me, especially in coaching, well, this is just my personality. This is just my personality. And many people in my life that, had done hurtful things or said hurtful things, they would be like, well, this is just my personality. And that sentence of Dr. Joe Dispenza really set me free in realizing they've just repeated certain characteristics about themselves so many times, whether they're good, bad, whatever it may be, that now it is their personal reality. They truly believe that that is set in stone, not realizing that your personality can absolutely change when you change the sentences associated with them. So I have loved that. So if you're someone who gets stuck in that, just remember that is changeable. You don't have to stay there. So here is the quote unquote trap of learned helplessness. Okay. It's a whole cycle. It's you try something, you fail, you then feel powerless over it. Okay. So then you stop trying, and then that confirms the belief that you're now powerless and that there's nothing that you can do. And people will do this in, again, every category of life over a multitude of things. I tried, I failed, then I felt like poo-poo. So I'm not going to try again because I don't want to feel like poo-poo, because I don't have the emotional capacity, aka the emotional intelligence skills, to move myself through that emotion powerfully. So instead, what it just confirmed for me is that I'm powerless and I'm going to be like this the rest of my life. Okay. And what I want to tell you from the emotional side of this is that this is not lazy behavior. It's protective behavior. Your brain is trying to keep you safe from any kind of pain. It's saying, we went through pain. It did not feel good. We didn't have the tools or use the tools to get out of the pain. And the only way to keep us safe from pain is to believe that this is where we're going to be forever. So now we have learned that we are helpless, even though that is not true. Okay. So when this happens, the dangerous part about it is that now you stop experimenting with your life. And let me just tell you, this is the whole premise around this entire podcast. This is not your practice life. This is not your practice life. You don't want to stop experimenting with your life. You don't want to stop playing in possibility. This is the one shot that you've got, and you don't know the timer on it. Okay? You don't know the timer. So stop selling yourself short, right? When you allow your self-concept to shrink and say, I can't, and you especially do that by looking at things that you haven't been able to do or achieve in the past, or what other people have or haven't been able to do around you, you rob yourself of what is possible in your own life. And this is not your practice life. So why are you doing that? Okay. So pay attention to phrases like, that's just how it is, or this is just how it is. I'm just not good at that. It never works. So why should I even try? Notice any kind of, avoidant behaviors like procrastination, disengagement, pulling away, numbing, because you want to really be clear on where you are buying into your own powerlessness, like where you actually believe you are not more powerful than you are. Because all of this is just, they're just limitations that you've created in your brain to try and avoid pain. Why are you doing that? Like, that is optional. You don't have to live that way. You don't have to do that. Okay? So here's the thing too, to break out of this, you have to become aware that you're doing it. So you have to name every single time that you are engaged in learned helplessness. When you know that this is a pattern for you, you have to stop believing that it's the truth. Okay? And here's the thing that I try to reiterate to all of my clients. They often think that they have to make this major big change at once, and it feels very overwhelming. And so then they get stuck and they spiral, and then they're not happy with where they are, a month in, 6 months in, a year in. And what I have to remind them of a lot is that this is about micro actions. You're not trying to burn down your entire life or overhaul your entire life in 1 week of coaching or 1 month of coaching or 6 months of coaching. You're working on micro changes, okay? Micro changes where you can prove to yourself that your efforts create different results. But also you have to show up differently. You can't take the same thought patterns. You can't take the same personality with you into the future, because whatever personality has gotten you up to this point, or whatever actions have gotten you up to this point, or whatever mentality has gotten you up to the point that you're at now, can't be the personality or the mentality or the thought process that takes you to your next level. There is a requirement of almost like a death of self to move on to the next best thing. So if you're fighting for the old patterns, if you're fighting for your old self, if you're fighting for your old traumas and things that you've had a hard time letting go, you're fighting for the past or how you were, treated, or the things that you experienced in the past. Like, if you're fighting for that and trying to take that into the future, you won't create a different future. You're going to create the same future over and over and over again because of this learned helplessness. So you have to be able to redefine failure and shift from proof that you can or you haven't been able to now having some data or results you can actually use and believe that it's in favor of who you're becoming, and ask yourself things like, where in the past have I changed something small that has added up to be something really great that is so different than what I would have experienced a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And then you keep doing that. And the reason that coaching containers are so powerful is because sometimes we need the external support. Sometimes we need to borrow belief from our coach, our coaching friends, right? A therapist or a supportive community, until we're able to see that possibility again. Like, we need people to be pouring into us and to also hold us accountable. You don't just want to have the people in your life that tell you everything you want to hear and, kiss your butt. You want the people that are like, here, let me hold you very, very accountable, but also pour life into you with, here's what I'm seeing, and, here's what you need to remind yourself of how far you've come and how proud you should be of yourself. So the last thing that I kind of want to leave you with is to remember about neuroplasticity. If you're not familiar with neuroplasticity, it's that your brain can rewire. So no matter how you're wired right now, if you actually want to change, and that's the biggest thing, if you actually want to change, any of the helplessness that you have been carrying can be unlearned. But you have to pair the new actions that you're taking with new outcomes. So again, you can't take the past with you as you do this, okay? You have to be willing to completely rewire your brain. And if there's anything from the past you're taking with you or trying to take with you, it's not going to work. You really have to be a blank slate and open for what's available to you on the other side in your future, like what is possible, not what has been, but what is possible. So remember that learned helplessness is learned, which means it can be unlearned. And it's not about waiting for motivation. It's starting with little micro actions, no matter how small they are. So, as a reminder to close, you want to ask yourself, where have I decided that any of my efforts don't matter? Or what's one tiny piece of something that I can test the opposite of this week? So anywhere where your brain is like, I can't do that, or that's impossible, or, I've never been that person. Where can you test the opposite? What if you did become that person? What if you could do it? What if instead of I don't have the emotional capacity to XYZ, you practice that you do have the emotional capacity to XYZ? Okay, anywhere where you've cowered down, where can you instead rise up? And you may not get the result you're expecting, but again, with learned helplessness, what you want to be sure of is when you get that experience that doesn't feel good, that you don't allow it to keep you in the spiral downward or to regress. That's what learned helplessness is. It's trying something, trying to change something, trying to change a behavior. And as soon as we're like defeated or shut down or feel like we failed at it or we didn't get the result we want, we then use that to stay in our negative cycle. And so instead, to come out of learned helplessness, you have to become better at your EQ skills of experiencing that pain and not letting that pain dictate your future. It's taking that experience and taking that pain and saying, I am strong enough to experience this pain and willing to try again, willing to keep going, willing to get myself out of this. So if you've ever felt that you are in learned helplessness, or maybe you're recognizing that this is what you're going through, just want to remind you that you're not broken. Okay, your brain is just in a very high protection mode, but this is not where you have to stay. And that every little small act of integrity with yourself, and every time you follow through or every single time you get back up, it unlocks more freedom in your life. So I hope that this episode is helpful, helps you see anywhere where you're engaging with this or in this, and that you then decide for yourself that you don't have to stay here. And if you need help getting out of this, I highly encourage you to reach out to schedule a 60-minute consult. Let's talk. Let's talk about what's going in your life. We'll talk about every single category of your life. We'll talk about how good you feel about every category of your life. And then I'll talk about the different options and solutions that I can offer if it feels like a good fit. And it has to feel like a good fit for both you and I. Okay, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what you've got going on. If it's a great fit, great. We'll move forward with some coaching because I look forward to helping you. I love this work. If it's not a good fit, that's okay. I can even refer you to someone that may be a better fit for you. I am not above doing that. I just want you to be in a place where you find exactly what you need, even if I'm not the person in that process, okay? So that is what I want to leave you with. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as a reminder, I do want to let you know that I extended the deadline for my newest mini program, The Threshold. It is a 4-week-long course on building up your self-trust. I'm going to have physical tools that I'll be mailing to you in addition to a workbook to help you really see where you fall off track, where you let yourself down, where you quit too soon. It's a wonderful program of building up your self-trust no matter the category. Okay, so it's going to apply to a range of different situations. And then if you didn't take my Elevated EQ program back in January when it first came out, it's called Elevated EQ, Your Self-Concept Blueprint. That program helps you get crystal clear on who you are, and more importantly, where you want to go in your life and who you want to be. It is vital for being successful in any of my other programs. No matter what the program is, if you know your self-concept, you will be able to walk away with the most benefit, no matter what you take of mine. Mini programs, advanced programs. So I really feel adamant that Elevated EQ, if you've never taken it, is a must. But in order to add on Elevated EQ, you have to be in Threshold because you also have to have self-trust skills. So this program is going to start on October 14th, and it's going to be 4 weeks long, held on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. Okay, we'll do 4 weeks of threshold. And then if you have opted into elevated EQ, which you can do at checkout for just $300, the program's normally $600. You can add it on for $300. If you add that on, once the 4 weeks of threshold is complete, you will continue working with me for 5 more weeks. Let me just tell you that between both programs, it will prepare you for the brand new advanced program that I have been working on for a year and a half that is going to be launching next year in 2026. It's a big one. You need to take these 1 or 2 things in order to be prepared to put yourself in that room, because I will not be slowing down in that new advanced program. I want everybody coming in to feel very greatly prepared and to know that you have the self-trust work that we're doing in Threshold, as well as the self-concept work we will be doing in Elevated EQ. So if you have not already taken Elevated EQ, or you need a refresher because you took it back in January, just make sure you add that on at checkout, okay? And from there, what it will do is put you in the running to be able to take the advanced program when it launches if you want to. And also, how serious I am about this is that the credit that, or the money that you spend on either Threshold alone, which is $497, or you can do a payment plan, or if you add Elevated EQ, it comes to $797. Again, there is a payment plan. The $497 or $797 will then be a credit discount that you can apply at checkout for the advanced program. Should you decide to participate in the advanced program in 2026, you can use a discount code that will either remove $497 or $797, depending on what you sign up for. That is how serious I am about wanting to make sure everybody is on the same page, because I've been working on this advanced program already a year and a half. It'll be almost 2 years by the time it is available to you, and I take it very, very seriously. I want to know that I have well prepared everybody, because I don't know exactly how people are going to respond to it, because it's a brand new program and it's new to me as well. But what I do know is I don't want anybody putting themselves in that room that is not ready and not prepared. So these are the prerequisites that you need to make sure you get into if you want to be able to apply to the brand new program that will be coming in 2026. Okay? All right. If you have any questions, you can always reach me in a DM on social media at Macy Renee Coaching, on Instagram, on Facebook, even on TikTok, although I don't always check the TikTok. The best way to get in touch with me if you do not have my phone number is email me, which is coaching@macyrenee.com. coaching@macyrenee.com. If you need a phone conversation, then make sure to schedule a 60-minute consult on macyrenee.com. All right, you guys, I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want, so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.